Hi and welcome back to the Classic MGB channel. So, an A to Z of MGB is quite a challenge. This list is personal and represents my view, so let me know in the comments whether or not you agree, and if not, what you'd include. So here we go. A is for Abingdon. Where else to begin than the birthplace and spiritual home of the MGB, Abingdon near Oxford in England. The factory was acquired in 1928 and remained producing cars until 1980, when the powers that be at British Leyland decided to close it down. Part of the site is now home to the MG Car Club. B clearly could be for the MGB, but as those of you that watched our earlier video 10 facts on the MGB will know, the B designation was originally designated to be the name of the MGA twin cam, so B for me is the venerable B series engine, the lump that powered the majority of MGBs produced. C is for MGC. Whilst not strictly an MGB, the MGC is pretty close, so we'll allow it. The MGC was launched in 1967 and was withdrawn in 1969, following disappointing sales figures. Many say this was due to poor handling with the revised front suspension, together with the 3-litre straight six changing the balance of the car. A good investment now though, as MGC prices are rising steadily. D is for Downton Engineering, the Wiltshire-based tuning company that developed a close relationship with the British Motor Corporation. Firstly with the venerable Mini, and subsequently with the MGB and MGC. Their first tuned MGB was tested by Motor Magazine and achieved a 0-60 time of 8.9 seconds, up from the 12.6 seconds of the standard car. Although company boss Daniel Richmond said, "It's not meant to go any faster, just be more tractable and use less petrol." E is for Enova. No countdown on the MGB would be complete without Sid Enova, the designer of the MGA and MGB. He joined Morris Garages, or MG, as an errand boy in 1921 with the help of his headmaster at the age of 15 and retired in 1971. Sadly, he passed away in 1993, but his legacy lives on in our wonderful little cars. F is for Friendship. The motto of the MG Car Club, based in Abingdon in England, is the mark of friendship. According to their website, the club's ethos is about enjoying MG cars and recognising the important role that the club's heritage plays in the way we conduct that enjoyment, but also that it is the source of long-lasting friendships amongst its members, and it's these two parts of the club on which these values are based. G is for GT, the MGB-GT. Dubbed the poor man's Aston Martin, the GT combines classic lines with sports car handling in a practical package. Launched at the Earls Court Motor Show in 1965, more than 125,000 GTs were produced, and unlike the Roadster where the majority were exported, around half of the GTs were sold in the home market. Before we continue, thanks to all our subscribers and others that support us. If you haven't subscribed, it'd be great if you could, and also click on the bell to be notified when we upload new content. Of course, a like's always appreciated as well. So, back to it. H is for Hayter, MG's last chief engineer, Don Hayter to be precise. Don came to MG from Aston Martin in 1956 as chief body draftsman. He played a major part in the development of the MGB and was involved with the SSV-1 experimental vehicle, as well as the MGC-GT race car. He was appointed chief engineer in 1973 and stayed until the factory closed in 1980. It's rumoured that he used to drive a prototype factory Roadster V8, rare as it never went into production. Sadly, he passed away in 2020, but as with Sid Enova, his legacy lives on. I is for Ireland, the Republic of Ireland. Between 1964 and 1971, 188 Roadsters and 216 GTs were built by Booth Pool from completely knocked down or CKD kits. Whilst this is only a small number compared to the 500,000 or so produced, the jigs used to assemble these Irish MGBs were eventually obtained by British Motor Heritage and are reportedly still used to produce heritage body shells to this day. J is for Jubilee. In 1975, British Leyland decided to release a special limited edition MGB-GT to mark the 50th anniversary of the famous Old Number 1. The car was finished in new racing green and sported gold Go Faster stripes that were notoriously difficult to apply, as well as Dunlop black and gold composite wheels. Strangely, this was the first model MGB-GT to feature full carpets. There were supposedly just 750 built, although it was reported that 2 more were built, one of which was used in a commercial, bursting through a giant newspaper. K is for Kimber, Cecil Kimber, the man that started developing Morris saloons into sports cars, the father of MG. Sadly, Cecil was killed in a train crash in 1945, but it's good to see the company went on to produce some fantastic cars, including the MGB. His legacy and the MG name endures to this day, of course, albeit in Chinese hands. L is for Leyland. In the 1960s, under British Motor Corporation ownership, MG thrived, delivering unparalleled growth and consistently outselling the Triumph TR range of sports cars. Sadly, once British Leyland was formed, senior management was dominated by Triumph people, and they obviously favoured Triumph as the future of sports cars at Leyland. Subsequently, the replacement for the MGB was cancelled in favour of the Triumph TR7. And we all know how that turned out. M is obviously for MG, the company that started it all. Originally an abbreviation for Morris Garages, the company started in 1923 when Cecil Kimber persuaded William Morris to allow a number of specials based on standard models to be produced. And the rest, they say, is history. N is for Nader. In 1965, Ralph Nader, a qualified lawyer, wrote the seminal book, Unsafe at Any Speed, in which he unleashed strong criticism of the American automobile industry. This resulted in the National and Motor Vehicle Safety Act, which brought in wide-ranging measures to improve road safety. This led to the biggest change to the MGB in its history, with the adoption of black, energy-absorbing bumpers and the raising of the ride height. O is for O Series, the engine that should have been put into the MGB. The problem with the aging B Series engine was that it was impossible to pass the stringent US emissions rules without seriously impacting the engine's power and torque. The O Series engine was relatively clean and could have solved these problems and allowed the MG to compete. Sadly, the decision not to make an O Series powered MGB effectively killed the car. P is for Pininfarina, the design house mainly responsible for the superb flowing lines of the MGB-GT. It is in good company though. Pretty much every Ferrari from 1951 to 2012 was designed by Pininfarina. Q is for Queen. Yes, stretching the point a little, but it is true that Queen Elizabeth II bought a mineral blue 1968 MGC-GT for her son, Charles, now King Charles III. The car boasted wire wheels, an electric aerial, and, almost unheard of in 1968, a car phone. R is for rubber bumpers. Possibly the most controversial modification to the MGB, so-called rubber bumpers, were added in 1974 to comply with US safety standards, and as mentioned before, the ride height was also raised. The funny thing was that the bumpers were actually plastic, not rubber at all, so are more properly referred to as black bumpers. S is for SU. Twin SU carburetors and SU fuel pumps were used on the B-Series engine in the majority of MGBs produced. The SU history goes all the way back to 1910, where brothers Bert and Carl Skinner formed the SU company. In 1952, the company became part of the British Motor Corporation, and annual output was increased to well over 1 million carburetors and 1.5 million fuel pumps. Sadly, the company's unwillingness to develop fuel injection systems in the 1980s saw its eventual demise. T is for Thornley. John Thornley was one of the founders of the MG Car Club and served as its first secretary, having bought his first MG in 1930. Later, he went on to become director and general manager of the MG Car Company, and described the MGB-GT as the car no managing director would be ashamed to leave in his car park. During his tenure as head of the company, the MG factory became the world's largest producer of sports cars. U is for the United States of America. The USA was the largest market for the MGB and in all probability the country with the most MGBs still running. The car was sold in the United States from 1962 to 1980, earning the UK much needed export revenue in the process. In fact, the success of the MGB can probably be attributed to its sales success across the USA. V is for V8, probably the quickest MGB that was ever made. After Ken Costello started putting Rover V8 engines into MGBs, British Leyland thought that was a great idea and decided to make their own. They also stopped supplying engines to Mr. Costello, citing lack of availability, but the cynic would say that it was simply to reduce competition. W is for Webasto, the sunroof system that was used effectively in the MGB-GT and offered a good compromise between the wind in the hair feeling of the Roadster and the comfort of a closed coupe. However, opinions differ as to whether this was actually a factory fit option at all, although some factory designs did show an aperture panel in the roof. Okay, it was difficult to find an X, so a bit of poetic license here. I'm going for the EX214, the first MGB prototype. The original quarter-scale model was created in June 1958 and the name became ADO-23 when the British Motor Corporation's naming convention was adopted in 1959. Y is for Your Mother Wouldn't Like It, the advertising slogan which, along with the imagery that apparently was okay in the 1970s but probably wouldn't be now. The adverts ran in multiple markets for most of the 70s and encompassed the midget as well as the MGB and MGB-GT. Z or Z is for Zetland in Australia, where Australian MGBs were built. From 1963, the Zetland site was used to manage imported parts, with assembly taking place 10 miles away in Enfield. In 1968, though, all production was moved to Zetland, and uniquely, according to a 1969 press release, the bodies of the MGB and Midget were the only roto-dipped anti-rust-proof sports cars in the world. The last MGB built in Australia was completed on the 6th of November 1972. Well, that's it. You've made it to the end of our A to Z of MGB. Let us know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed it, please give it a like and consider subscribing, as the algorithm gods really like that. As always, many thanks for watching. Take care.